A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. This week, we have a case that is so egregious, so upsetting, that we are going to dedicate the whole program to covering it. How is it possible that a young woman seeking help and protection from the court is dismissed? The young woman told police that her boyfriend nearly killed her. Her father, a respected doctor, took pictures of his daughter's bloody head and swollen face to show it to the judge at a bail hearing. He said clearly to the judge, if you release the accused by lowering his bail, he will kill my daughter. And tragically, police say the father was right. Can you imagine that father's loss and pain? And what about the judge? What was she thinking? We are recording this on Wednesday, July 17th of 2024. Our guest today is Mike King, a law enforcement expert, an author, the host of the true crime podcast, Profiling Evil, and just a wonderful human being. Always so good to see you, Mike. So glad you're with us.
It is great to be with you, Anna. I always just really jump up and down when you give me the call and invite me back. Thank you.
Yay. Always an invitation. Always an invitation. We have some wonderful people on this podcast. It just always makes me so happy. I will turn on a TV or I'll click on a video and so many of you, all of you who are on this podcast are always doing commentary on these complex cases. So we are very fortunate to have you, Mike.
Thank you. It's fun to be here.
Well, this case is outrageous and it is heartbreaking because, in my opinion, this woman's death was completely avoidable.
The whole thing incenses me. I mean, I go back to the early 90s when we were first putting together the advocacy groups. And I think, are you kidding me that we're 35 years later and we still have these kinds of things happening, that victims somehow get lost in the process and become re-victimized?
So completely avoidable. And a human life has been lost. A family has been devastated. And the worst part of this for me is the family sounded the alarm. The father took photos of his daughter, even though police had even more damaging videos of the victim here. And yet somehow this fell on truly deaf ears. He warned the judge. He clearly said, if you let him out, he will kill her. And he did. And he did.
What a great example of how powerless family members feel as their children start making decisions, some that you may not like. And you watch this thing like a slow-moving train. I'm sure we're going to get into all of the issues around domestic violence and the domestic violence homicide cycle. But you look at this, and all you can do as a parent is continue to love, continue to reach out, continue to open doors and say, hey, there's a way to fix this. But you're watching something where two people, fuel and fire, are coming together, and you just got this gut feeling, as I suspect the family did from the get-go, that this thing is not going to end well.
No. This is the murder of a young woman from Gulfport, Mississippi. It has made huge headlines, not just because of the murder, but again, because everyone is just outraged at how the courts handled this situation when faced with very strong evidence, say police, of prior abuse. Police say he nearly killed her the first time. And that's why he was in prison. And that's why this bail hearing had come up. And that's why the family of this young woman didn't want him let out, because they were afraid he would finish what he set out to do. Now, mind you, he is just charged. So innocent until proven guilty. but there is a ton of evidence here. So let's get down to this. And the other thing about this case, Mike, that really troubles me, but I think is very important, it exposes everything that is wrong with our criminal justice system. If there are weaknesses, this case, sadly, has been a victim of all those weaknesses. So let's get into this. The victim here is 22-year-old Lauren Johansson. Lauren was found beaten to death in her car near a cemetery earlier this month on July 3rd. Her 23-year-old boyfriend, actually ex-boyfriend at this point, Bryson Rivers, was tackled by police as he ran from Lauren's car. For those of you who are listening, there was a police helicopter above the scene. It's one of those like dark gray, black and white videos, but you can see him running and then police tackling him. He was arrested and charged with murder. This fatal attack on Lauren's life occurred 9 days after Bryson was released from a Tennessee jail after his bail was lowered. He was being held in this jail on a charge of brutally assaulting Lauren while they were on a trip to Nashville. That's why the case was being heard in Tennessee, because that is where the previous assault had taken place. The conditions of his release when they lowered the bail was he had to get an ankle monitor and he couldn't leave the county. What do you think he did? Do you think he followed any of these instructions? Let's be real.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty clear when we look into this case that he didn't follow those instructions. Just from the very get-go of the moment he left jail, it was in violation of that court order. And then he ends up going to an ankle monitor company to get that GPS tracking device put on him. And that place happens to have closed down. Maybe why the judge initially said you can't send him out after 4 p.m. But then the probation officer or the court or somebody agrees and allows him to go to another company that doesn't have the court order. So they're relying on the suspect, the defendant in this case, to decide whether he should be staying locally, as the court order actually said, or if he can go to Mississippi, like he tells them that he has the permission of the court to do. And they apparently take his opinion and run with it.
Oh, so many failings here. So many failings here. By the time that the DA's office realized that he was no longer in the state of Tennessee, that he did not have an ankle monitor on, they called Lauren's father, because they were trying to reach her and couldn't reach her, to warn the family, because as a victim, it's one of the few rights you have, to be told that your alleged attacker is on the loose. They have no idea where he is. No idea where he is. Well, and then there was just so much bureaucracy beyond that in trying to even locate her car and everything. It was just too late. By the time the DA's office figured out that this guy was gone and then they warned the family, it was too late.
This is Bailey calling from the district attorney's office here in Nashville. Bryson Rivers was released from custody. He was supposed to report straight to a GPS company and be put on a GPS monitor, and he was not to leave Davidson County. But as soon as he was released, he did not report to that GPS monitoring company, and he has not been heard from. So I want to make sure that Lauren is safe.
You know, I really have a problem with this, and I try not to be too critical of law enforcement. I loved the profession. I love the court system. I love the criminal justice system. But I remember back in the early 90s when we were putting together some of the first advocacy programs in the United States. And I know what that thing has evolved to look like today. And so I'm really troubled by the fact that, number one, the victims were not, and the victim family apparently in this case, because the DA reaches out to her father, the victim or the victim's family wasn't notified immediately that, hey, we've kind of changed the rules and he's coming to Mississippi. And maybe the court could argue they didn't know that, but the bond agency that put that ankle device on did. And, you know, you think about the VINE notification system, that victim advocacy notification system that's national. Those things are set in place to let people know every step of the way if somebody is coming into an area that they would be concerned about. and it failed one time after another. And of course, I'm just looking at public documents. So the court and law enforcement and the parole and probation department might have a different attitude about what happened. But looking at these optics from the outside through public documents looks like a massive failure one time after another.
And that is exactly what Lauren's heartbroken father, Dr. Lance Johansson, told WLOX TV.
I think the criminal justice system in Nashville, Tennessee, failed my daughter and our family. The world shouldn't work this way. She had dreams and hopes that were larger than life. And the best quality of about her was that she had a really big heart and would do anything for anyone to help them out. Everything she did, everything she touched turned to gold.
I agree with Lauren's father. The criminal justice system failed Lauren and her family terribly. And you can't rectify this. And please don't start with, oh, we're looking into it and there's an investigation and there's going to be a paper released and then we're going to change guidelines. And it's like, that is just too late for Lauren. Imagine a burglary at your home. If you're picturing a shady character sneaking about under the cloak of night, you may be surprised to learn that according to the FBI, most break-ins happen during broad daylight, and they spike during the summer season when most homes sit unattended and the days grow longer. That's why you need Simply Safe Home Security now. Simply Safe is the only security company I trust with my own home and family's protection, offering me peace of mind whether I'm home or away. What I love about Simply Safe is the confidence it gives me to enjoy my time away from home. I know that no matter where I am or what I'm doing, the people that I love are protected. Knowing that Simply Safe is always there for me is a major relief. With Fast Protect monitoring and live guard protection, Simply Safe agents can act within 5 seconds of receiving your alarm and can even see and speak to intruders to stop them in their tracks. You'll never be locked into a long-term contract you can cancel at any time. Pricing is transparent and affordable at less than $1 a day with no hidden fees ever. Simply Safe has been named Best Home Security Systems by U.S. News and World Report for 5 years running and offers the best customer service in home security according to Newsweek. It's easy to install and activate your Simply Safe system in less than an hour, or choose a professional to install it for you. Have a pro do it for you. Protect your home this summer with 20% off any new Simply Safe system when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring. Just visit simplysafe.com/truecrime. That's simplysafe.com/truecrime. There's no safe like Simply Safe. So before we discuss the details of the murder and how all of that unfolded, let's just get a little background and a little perspective here on this relationship and the red flags and the attempts to end this relationship and the ramifications of that each time that Lauren tried to end it. So Lauren grew up the daughter of a respected orthopedic surgeon. She was the oldest of 4 children with a younger brother and a pair of younger twin sisters. And much like her father, she wanted to help people. So she actually was pursuing a nursing degree at the University of Southern Mississippi. Lauren and Bryce's relationship began in high school. And in high school in Gulfport, Mississippi. And Lauren was beautiful and popular. Bryson was a star on the high school football team. I mean, storybook. It's always storybook. Maybe just on the outside. It seemed like a perfect match until Bryson became obsessive and controlling. The first signs of domestic violence, the obsessive, controlling, mental torture. And according to Lauren's family, Bryson then became violent several times. When Lauren headed to college at the University of Southern Mississippi, they thought that that would be a natural ending to the relationship, which is apparently what Lauren wanted at the time. However, as we know, physical distance isn't always enough. Very sad, very sad. Now, while Lauren was away working on her career and her life, Bryson goes in the opposite direction personally. According to public records, he spiraled into a life of crime. He had a DUI in 2021, then was arrested in 2022 for possession of a controlled substance and auto burglary. What is not clear to us, and of course this is an ongoing investigation, is was he convicted on any of those arrests? And the reason that is a really big point, Mike, is because the judge in the case in Tennessee who reduced the bail said she was not aware of his criminal background. What do you make of that?
I mean, I've seen that happen, especially when you're into other states where maybe there's not a compact in place to share information. That's the whole purpose behind the adult probation and parole pre-sentence investigation. And as this thing would have matured, they would have learned more. But undoubtedly, they would have had access to some information if they'd only reached out. Did they reach out? I don't know.
A lot of things we don't know about this case, but all good questions, and all the fact that they can't be answered easily just gives me pause as to maybe there was something that was missed or something that didn't go as smoothly and as quickly and apparent as it should have. So it seemed that no matter how hard Lauren tried, she could not get rid of Bryson. And we see that a lot with domestic violence. They're never going to let the other one go. According to family members, Bryson continued to stalk and harass Lauren. They say he broke into her apartment and he even tried assaulting any man that she would try dating. One would think police would have been involved at this point.
Absolutely. And did the family put forth some effort to do some things like try to get her to get a restraining order in place, make sure that there was something happening in those cases where he had threatened people, try to pursue those to the point that you could do something. You know, the really sad thing about these domestic violence situations is they never seem to get better. Now, there's somebody that probably will call in or write in, Anna, and say, hey, I happened to live through it and it got better. Personally, I've never seen it happen in 40 plus years of looking at these kinds of cases. And why we have these mindsets, and maybe it's because she is kind of, as the family described, this compassionate soul who wants to rescue and fix broken things. We think we can change things, but they just don't change. Domestic violence only gets worse.
It does. So all of this is going on, right? And they've tried to break it off. Or she has tried to break it off. And it seemed like at least they were moving in the right direction, despite the allegations that he was still harassing her and then going after her boyfriends. So what came as a complete shocker, this happened in December of 2023, Lauren announces that she has agreed to go to Nashville with Bryson for a little vacation to work on their relationship. Her family was horrified and scared.
Yeah, and who wouldn't be? I mean, you're watching this thing again. I use the analogy, a slow-moving train wreck. You're watching what you know is probably not going to end up a healthy thing. And all you can do as a parent or a friend even is sit and watch, because they just don't want to hear what you have to say usually.
Oh, this trip, this so-called romantic trip, became a near fatal trip for Lauren. Bryson started in on Lauren on this trip, accusing her of cheating on him, claiming she had hooked up with a bartender in the bathroom, just insane stuff. And then police say that Bryson grabbed Lauren's phone so she couldn't call for help. So this is escalating. The assault, the alleged assault that we're discussing now, is the one that led him to be arrested. And then the bail was reduced, which made it possible for him to leave. And then there's the second crime, which would be the murder. So we're still here on the assault. And when you hear the details and see the photos, I can't imagine there's going to be one of you that y'all will clearly see he should have never been let out. It's clear to anyone. You don't need to be a judge or a law degree to figure this one out. Okay, so he's getting more and more violent. Apparently they're driving And how he manages this to drive and punch her and then pull out chunks of her hair. Police say that Bryson drove to a secluded parking lot, and that is where the ruthless beating continued. Bryson reportedly kept Lauren in that car for over an hour, refusing to let her leave. She's screaming for help, but nobody can hear her. This is the incredible part for me. So Lauren is trapped in this car. Bryson gets a call from his mother, and he answers, and she starts screaming. And she's screaming, and I guess Bryson's mother knew, perhaps as well as anyone, what was truly going on. And thank God she called authorities to find him and track him down, and they did. That's horrible enough, right? Oh, it only gets worse. Thank goodness the body cams were rolling, because the judge makes a point of this, saying when she's trying to decide on bail, it's like, well, there's a high probability of conviction here just on the body cam video. What does that tell you? Authorities get there, and Lauren has been stripped down to her underwear. She's banging on the car to escape, banging for help, screaming. Police say she's clearly traumatized. They finally release her from the car, all captured on body cam. She's beaten to a pulp, and we're going to show those photos. Bryson is charged with 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, 1 count of aggravated stalking, 1 count of coercion of a witness, and his bond is set at $250,000. And that's where he sat until the bail reduction hearing months later. Mike, these photos that we're going to put up are incredibly disturbing. In fact, Lauren is unrecognizable in these photos. Her eye, the one that is so swollen that it looks like in purple, it looks like there is a plum growing out of her eye. It's massive.
I've always appreciated prosecutors that can go into a hearing when they initially level the charges and speak to the fact that this individual shouldn't be let out of jail and why they shouldn't be let out. And I don't think it's really hard when you hear and see the body cam video that the judge saw to visualize what was going on. You can visualize how even driving, this is a kid who played high school football, and he was an athlete. He was apparently physically fit. When you watch that video when he's apprehended, he's running at a good clip, and this is after 6 hours of running through the woods. So this is a kid who's in pretty darn good shape. So you can start to visualize the pummeling that was occurring, even if he's holding on to the wheel. And if he's got a weapon in his hand and he's giving her blunt force trauma from that weapon, the hair getting pulled out of her head as he's controlling her, all of that becomes so visual in my mind. I don't need to see the pictures to see how violent this situation was. And then, of course, to have that, I find myself scratching my head on why on earth he was ever allowed out of jail.
I just don't know the answer to that. She appeared to be pistol whipped. Her face had been so beaten. Her body had been beaten. She was so swollen, unrecognizable, covered in bruises. The father took these photos. He's a physician. He took these photos himself. This is in addition to the police photos and the police videos. So he would have a document himself. And when you see these photos, I cannot imagine that there is a court anywhere in this country that would think, how is it possible to release the man who is accused of doing this? I mean, where are her rights? It's all about his rights.
And listening to that father, he approaches things from a clinical standpoint, but it finally becomes even too much for him. And you hear his voice starting to break as he describes what his daughter was going through, and that he couldn't even recognize her, Anna.
No, she is unrecognizable in these photos. They are so disturbing. So after months in jail on those assault charges, again, innocent until proven guilty, but even the judge said on the record, high probability of conviction just based on the body cam video. Just based on the body cam video as they released that woman from that torture that she was subjected to in that car. So the initial hearing, the initial bail was set at $250,000. And remember, you just need to put up 10%. And then at the next hearing, this is the one where the father attends, brings the photos, and the DA said they don't want this man released. They don't want bail to be lowered. Clearly, if he could have made bail, he would have been out already, and he'd been sitting in there for months. And the father clearly told the judge, and I will keep repeating this until, because it has to be said over and over again, if you let him out, he will kill my daughter. He said those words. It was a clear warning. He had the evidence to substantiate this, and that warning was not heeded. The bail was reduced to $150,000, and so his family was able to put up the $15,000 to get him out, and that is exactly what he did. So there's his rights. There's his freedom.
You know, and you often see the court do this where they say, you know, $200,000 is no different than $5 million. This person would never be able to get out and help in their own defense and everything else. And so you see the court kind of leaning this direction. But when you have this kind of compelling information to say this guy is dangerous, even at that point, I'm wondering, then why wasn't there, before a decision made to release and reduce bail, why wasn't there a, hey, we're going to have a hearing in 2 weeks, and in the meantime, probation and parole, I want a history on this guy. I want to know more about this guy I'm thinking about releasing. But I don't know that that happened. I suspect it didn't happen.
So he makes bail. He's unleashed into the public on June 24th, 2024. 9 days later, Lauren would be dead. And the system moves so slowly in its notification, where those 9 days would have been a decent lead time, but not when you delay in notifying the family. On June 28th, Lance, Lauren's father, received a voicemail from the Davidson County District Attorney's Office warning him that Bryson violated the terms of his release and that they have not been able to contact him.
Yeah. So were there other notifications before that said, hey, we've released him. Oh, by the way, we just figured out that he's now released and he's out in the open? Or was this the first notification that he'd even been released? And I suspect it wasn't, because from what I've found is that Lauren was receiving thousands of phone calls in that period of time from Rivers. So this thing, she immediately knew he was on the prowl and he was still fixated on her.
This just makes my stomach turn. So then on July 2nd, earlier this month, Lauren was reported missing by her family at around 4 a.m. Lance, that would be the dad, was alerted via the Life 360 app that Lauren was disconnected. Now, Lauren's younger sister, Caitlin, had been staying there, with the family, staying with Lauren. And she was home, apparently, at the time of the abduction. Caitlin woke up to find the front door was open, that the security camera had been ripped out of the wall, the front door, and tossed into the bushes. Just hearing that, having seen the photos and what this woman has lived through, it's just telegraphing that something even worse is about to happen.
Yeah. And, from a behavioral perspective, Anna, when I read this, it kind of troubled me because either Rivers, and of course the forensics is going to reveal much of this when they look at the camera data and they compare it with phone data and other kinds of things. But but does he break into the house and abduct her? And if so, how does he do it so quietly that the sister isn't alarmed and shaken out of bed and awakened? Or is this a situation where he again convinces her, I'm a different person. I just want to talk to you for a minute to say I'm sorry. And this rescuer kicks in and steps out the door. But that to me is going to be really important too in adding aggravation to this crime if in fact he's found guilty of it.
Yeah, apparently the front door was open, and I guess they have animals and they were in the front yard. So your theory about whether he was able to lure her out is, I think it's very possible. We don't know yet, but I think that's very possible. The following day, on July 3rd, finally they find Lauren's vehicle in the Wolf River Cemetery. And I mean, this is just horrible. They find Lauren's body, she's dead, in the car, concealed with sheets and trash bags. And as we mentioned at the top, there was a police helicopter that eventually caught Bryson Rivers running from the car, and he's jumped by police. And Lauren's father arrived at the scene to witness this horror that his daughter had been subjected to, and he actually helped the coroner remove Lauren's body from the car. This is what her father told WLOX television.
I knew she was dead. When we got there, her car was out like in the middle of the cemetery. She was in the back of the car wrapped up in a bunch of sheets and trash bags, and she was basically beaten to death. Her face was smashed in, her head was smashed in. She was just brutally beaten to the point she couldn't see out of either eye when she finally died. I helped the coroner lift her body out of the car. It was just mutilated.
Mike, I don't have words for what that father experienced at that time. And I don't think, and I certainly don't hope, I hope not, that there's no implications in the fact that he helped carry her body out of the car with the forensics team there. I mean, what do you do in a situation like that? You want to give a moment of respect to a family member because he wants to carry his daughter's body.
Yeah, I'm a little troubled by that as well. Number one, this is someone who's been in the medical field, so he's a clinician and probably not traumatized by injury. But you've now added the fact that this is his daughter, one of his most prized parts of his life, and so the fact that law enforcement allows him to maybe come into the scene in a controlled way is still a little troubling to me, and yet probably a very kind thing to do. But to allow him to be where evidence could be contaminated or someone could claim something, I don't know. That's troubling to me. And again, I want to know if it was resource driven that he has to help do this, or if it's that they're trying to show a moment of compassion and bless them for being compassionate, but it seems to me like a lack of wisdom to protect that crime scene and that body for the forensic examination that has to follow, even though it strongly points toward Rivers as responsible.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if Bryson Rivers did murder Lauren, as police say, you want to make sure that he really is behind bars for the rest of his life and never has an opportunity to walk out. And you want to make sure that there is a conviction here, whether he pleads out or whatever. You don't want to compromise the investigation. However, I think as a member of the jury or anyone else, you tell me this, that the father did, help carry the body out. I don't hold it against the police and I don't hold it against the prosecutor. It's important that it be transparent and that the prosecutors say this and the police say clearly that this is what happened and this is how he did it and we made that decision and it was compassionate and it was not going to taint the forensics. As long as they're transparent about it, this is the thing. When it comes to the law and wiggle room, the wiggle only goes one way. It always goes, in favor of the person accused, never in favor of the victim. So hopefully it doesn't mess that up. I don't think so. And frankly, there needed to be a moment of humanity in this entire case. And if that's when the humanity came, when they said, of course you can help move your daughter's body. If so be it. If that is the moment that finally someone in this crazy system offered a little piece of humanity. We'll see. I mean, there's so much evidence. We don't know what the evidence is in the current murder case, right? The forensics are out until we get all that evidence back. And like you said, you want to know about GPS, you want to know about the phone, you want to know, was she lured out of the house? Did he break in? All these things that will go toward this charge.
Yeah, if all of this is true, Anna, I think they need to go back and revisit the previous case from December and look at whether this is an attempted homicide, not just an aggravated kidnapping, but an attempted homicide, and try to beef up those two so that this guy is facing charges that are going to put him away for the rest of his life, if in fact he's responsible for these crimes.
I know you're not an attorney, so you may not be able to answer this next question. But the fact that Lauren is dead and that the assault charges are in another state, do they then just drop those charges because she's dead?
No, I think we'd see, like we're seeing, let's use Lori Vallow Daybell for an example. She's convicted on the homicide charges in Idaho and now is facing homicide charges in Arizona. Sometimes the prosecution, and I was privileged to serve in a prosecutor's office at the Attorney General for many, many years. Sometimes you have to make a decision that's a little bit financial based, and other times you make a decision because the family deserves to have a case heard in both venues, or you're concerned that one venue may not give you the time in prison that this person deserves to have. My hope would be that he's held accountable for both of these incidents. And if there are others in between, that he's held accountable for those and that he's charged for those and prosecuted for those, even if they allow him to negotiate a plea later down the line to get something. So no, hopefully they'll continue forward with the aggravated kidnapping charge, maybe reconsider and look at it as an attempted homicide where he is threatening her. If you do anything, you're gonna be killed. And then, of course, the actual homicide. And if they have cases to take him to trial on both of those and he's found guilty, hopefully he'd be punished for both, independent of one another.
Just amazing. Well, Bryson Rivers, he has a new bail now. Guess what it's set at? Bond is set at $1 million. And I don't think there is a judge in any county in Mississippi that will ever lower that.
Well, I certainly hope not.
No, I certainly hope not. I certainly hope not. This is the absolute worst possible outcome that could have happened from this case. I sense from listening to Lauren's father that he is going to try and make some changes in justice as a result of what happened to his daughter. And that is how he will be empowered by this horrendous tragedy. But it's awful. It is among the worst cases that we've covered here on the podcast. Well, we need a little break here in the crime conversation. Our producer, Will Updike, is joining us now. We're doing something a little different in our comments section. Will, you're going to talk about a case where the victim in the case took matters into her own hands.
Yeah, something a little uplifting. This one for the victim ended up turning out, about as good as it could have gone. This week, we have a case of a luggage check detective making a solo save. The case comes out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where an airline passenger used their own resources to track down a piece of lost luggage, which actually ended up at the home of an airport employee's house. So this, I know it's nuts. This began on March 3rd when Ana Garcia was on a Spirit Airlines flight, which was canceled They tell all the passengers to go ahead and grab their checked bags from the baggage area. And now, Paula, she generally she carries a distinctive sort of pink suitcase. Normally uses it as a carry-on, but she was told that she had to check it. If you know Spirit Airlines, you know that things like that kind of tend to happen a lot on that airline, but that's another matter. This bag, she said that it contained, her laptop is in there, a MacBook, her iPad, an Apple Watch. She apparently had some other jewelry in there, some clothing, and then of course like her toiletries and all the stuff you would bring when you travel. So some big ticket items in there, along with just kind of your regular travel stuff. So long story short, she gets to the baggage claim. Luggage isn't there. She contacts Spirit. They said they're going to ship it to her address. They eventually, she follows up and they say they've already shipped it to her address, which when we get a little further in the case, I'm not really sure what was going on there with that, with that assertion. But she's tired of waiting. It's been like days since this has happened. So she decides to take it into her own hands. She uses her phone to ping the electronics, all these Apple electronics in this thing, and she's able to come up with an address. So she moves forward with this, like very brazenly, like by herself, which I think is, brave, maybe a little scary, very dangerous. Yeah, we'll get into that. The police said the same, but she tracks her things down to this address, and she's knocking on the door of the home. She can't get a hold of anybody, but there were apparently like several pieces of luggage in front of the house.
Isn't that weird? That is so weird.
Yeah. So she, takes pictures. She films this. She calls the police, and the police, of course, like the first thing they said was like, "What are you doing here? This is way too dangerous for you to be there. You got to get out of there." So what she brings to the police is enough for them to kind of do their own investigation. And they recover security footage from the baggage check that appears to show this employee removing it from there. And then this employee actually worked at one of the retail stores at the airport. So the police were also able to contact the loss prevention manager of the store, and they provided police with CCTV footage from the incident. And the suspect here, Junior Bazile, could allegedly be seen with a what looked like a pink roller bag, sort of taking some items out of it and putting the items in other bags. But this ended up being enough to warrant an arrest. On March 8th, Junior Bazile was arrested and charged with grand theft in the third degree. He's being held on a $30,000 bond. And I want to give a tip of the hat to this woman who was very resourceful and happy that there's an end. I got to say, with summer, we're all traveling all the time. Anytime you have to check your bag, I feel like I get a little bit scared. I've even had very good luck. I think I've only ever had one lost bag and they got it back to me. But very worrisome stuff. Anna, you actually sent me this story.
I did.
I thought it was, yeah.
I thought it was so interesting when I saw her interview, and the fact that she just was like, I'm tracking it. I've got all my devices so I can find my devices. I'm here. Why are there suitcases supposedly on this lawn? I am glad that she videotaped this. So it wasn't just her version of what happened. And again, right. As far as the suspect here, innocent until proven guilty, he denies the charges. And his mother also has spoken up in his defense that he didn't steal anything. But, that was really, no one was going to find her suitcase for her. Let's face it. When your suitcase disappears, nobody cares as much as you do. So I was just stunned at what she found. And that she actually found it. She's brave, but I think it was also, Mike, don't you think it's pretty risky stuff?
Oh, it's incredibly risky, but hats off to her for following that. And, I kind of call these circumstantial cases the best cases around, because what's the chances that this airline employee with Spirit, who happens to be on video, is living in a home where she finally has this tracking device take her to say, this is where my stuff is, and law enforcement retrieves that stuff. Those are pretty amazing coincidence. But you know what? If you figure it out on your own, folks, call police and say, I'm parked at the corner 7-Eleven, and this is where my stuff is. Would you come and meet me?
That's a great tip. Like, that's probably, she probably could have called police and just given them the location and then gone from there to see if she had to go any further. Because I have heard some stories where sometimes people are trying to recover not as much luggage, but like an item like a laptop or something, and the police are like, you give them the thing and they're like, just file a report. And
and right, and there's nobody's ever going to go get it for you, which is, now I've started putting air tags on everything. I don't know if it's ever going to help me if I lose a suitcase. After my suitcases were delayed so many times when I was working for Crime Watch Daily, because I was on the road all the time and I lived in and out of suitcases. And, when you're traveling for at least 10 days and you have 3 shoots in 3 states, you can't really wear the same stuff over again. So I would need more than a carry-on. And so the executives started getting so upset with me because each time they'd be like, oh my God, is she wearing the same thing she was traveling in and she hasn't washed her hair because she doesn't have anything?
It was all gone. What were you supposed to do?
And right. And so they're like,
although I could see you tracking it down. You have so much experience, knocking on doors and stuff. I could see you, being a similar sort of hero in this situation.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I would just give up. And because then I'd be moving so quickly that the airlines couldn't keep up with me to get the suitcase to me. So then I changed my entire way of traveling. I would take a carry-on with like 3 days worth of work clothes in it and all of the things I needed in the carry-on. And then the suitcase would be, to augment everything for the really long trip. And now I've given up on all of that. Now I go to Europe for 10 days. I just have a carry-on. I don't care. That's it. I'm wearing the same thing every day. That's the way to do it. I'm done. I'm done with it.
It's awesome.
But then when you get your pictures back, it seems like
that's all I'm wearing.
You saw all of Paris in one day, or all of a country in a single day because you're wearing the same thing.
It's true.
Change the color in Photoshop.
There you go. There you go. Similar top, just different colors. Love it.
Will, thanks so much. Always good to see you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anna.
Mike, it's always such a pleasure to have you on the program. What are you up to these days? You're always working on something.
I just finished another season with History's Greatest Mysteries, so that's really fun. We had the King Tut special come out on June 3rd. That was a lot of fun to participate on, and I'm working on another documentary with Fox that should wrap up sometime in August. So I've been doing that and trying to kick out videos on profiling evil. So just having a great time. And, Anne, I think I wrote you a note, but I officially retired from real work in January, and I've just been having a blast.
Wow. Well, now, it doesn't sound like you're retired there, Mike.
Well, I am still running around and doing some really cool things. In fact, I'll tell you, last week I spent 2 days out on the northwest Utah desert with Dylan Round's mother. And we spent some time with a group of people searching for more of Dylan's bones. Sadly, but I guess triumphantly, we recovered more of his remains. And then we spent the time smoothing out and kind of disguising the disposal site, or that clandestine grave where he was buried. So still trying to do whatever we can to help out folks. And man, jumping on a show like this just makes my week.
Wow. Well, Mike, it's always appreciated that you take a moment to help others in need, because the system is just not kind. It's just not kind to families. It's just not. So thank you for what you do. It's truly appreciated. Mike, where can people follow you?
Thanks. Just go to profilingevil.com on the web, or at profilingevil, the little @ profilingevil, one word, will get you to YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and all those crazy things that my kids tell me I have to be a part of.
Yes, they're right. And we are at My True Crime News on all platforms. You can find me at Anna G News, Anna with one N. This episode, all our episodes of our podcasts are available to you wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, True Crime News, and also sign up to receive our newsletter at truecrimenews.com. So until next week, this is True Crime News, the podcast. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. And as we always say, don't do crime.